In this episode of the IT Experts podcast, if you think you're on the same page as your business partner, are you on the same page as your business partner? That's a question that you can ask. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast, the only podcast to help MSPs scale to 1 million, and if already there, get to 5 and go faster. At the end of the day, isn't it all about building a business that works for you rather than you for it? I hope you enjoy the show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast. Today, I have got a guest who has wanted to come on the podcast. And I say that not lightly, but someone, Joe Burns, has reached out to me after Stuart and I had a podcast about business partners and aligning your business partners being on the same page. And Joe says, hey, Ian, I need to talk to you. I've got a message here. So good afternoon, Joe. How are you doing today?
Hi, Ian. I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem at all. So what's just happened? Let's just put a bit of pretext around this. So Stuart and I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and because what we're seeing in the Growth Hub right now is many MSPs coming together, and many of them have got two business partners. Some of them they may be owners, they may be senior partners. And some of the challenges that we see, and the purpose of the podcast is to help you understand, we'll put the link in the show notes on this one, is to help you understand what happens if you may be misaligned with your business partner. One of you may be quite visionary, one of you may be very technical, one of you may be ambitious to grow, one of you may not be that ambitious to grow, and how to overcome and how to deal with the strains and the stresses that brings when trying to work out what winning looks like for you in your business. So as usual, Stuart and I flung up the mics, had a chat, put a podcast out, and it hit Joe's earbuds and he went, hang on a minute, I've done this. I've experienced this. I love to share my story on what happened. And when people do that, and by the way, if anybody else has got a success story or something they want to share about any of the 170, whatever it is we're up to now, podcasts on the podcast, just message me on LinkedIn, drop me an email, whatever it might be, and we'll get you on, because what this is going to be really powerful about is listening to Joe's story and understanding how some of the methodology and maybe some of the frameworks that we spoke about in the earlier podcast actually came to life for Joe and gave him the impact. And, just had a chat right now on the great place that he's at now. So without further ado, Joe, give us a little bit of an intro. Who are you? What do you do? Who do you help?
Okay, so Joe Burns, and the basically scaled not one, but now two MSP businesses. So I'll tell you more about the first one because that relates to the story in a moment. But I've learned a lot in my time in the MSP world. Started back in 2005 when I was 21. And for some reason, I love this industry so much that after exiting one business, I started again, co-founded another business. So glutton for punishment, some might say. But yeah, I really, really enjoy being in the MSP community and also now, very actively involved as a speaker and conference events. You can catch me at a lot of those things. So yeah.
Right. Okay. First question that we weren't going to prep for. The MSP community, right? We have people who come into our world and they say, oh my God, I never even knew this existed. Whether it be the Tech Tribe, CompTIA, any of the vendor events, any of these kind of great things right now. When you say community, what do you mean? And why does every single MSP, not only listening to this, but every single MSP in the UK need to get involved in the community, particularly from a business owner? I mean, you come back for more. You must be mad, a lot of people are saying. But what does the community mean to you, Joe?
Yeah, well, it's funny because, again, my two businesses tell two different stories. So in the first MSP, I was very defensive. So I wouldn't collaborate or communicate with a lot of what I would class back then as competitors, the people in the MSP world. So we were quite guarded about what we did and were quite defensive. And having, exited that business and then shared my story quite a few times, been involved in Reformed, what I've come to realize is actually the MSP community is a brilliant community. Most people in our industry are really collaborative, friendly. We help each other out. We bring the whole industry up rather than trying to push other people down. And I think generally that's why I think it's so important for MSP business owners to be in that community. And plus, let's be honest, it's a stressful environment we're living in as MSP business owners. Stressful environment, high pressure. I've spoken to some people at events and they just say, I come to this for therapy, to talk to other people and realize that others are going through the same sort of pressures and the same things that I am, and it feels better that way. So yeah, I think everyone should get involved.
And it'd be remiss of me not to mention the L word, lonely. It's a lonely place. A lot of people sort of like think we're going to get a bit vulnerable with some of these deep words, but we have a lot of people say to us, do you know what? It's a lonely place for me out there. How did you get comfort from the community with either of your MSPs? It sounds like the first MSP, you used the community to lift you up, and now now you're kind of giving back with the second, your second MSP. Can't wait to see what you're going to do with your third MSP. From a business owner's point of view, moving all those what we technically call the shitty little voices in your head where I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I don't have the confidence, and all these things. And that growth, that personal growth of yours, just share with us a little bit of that personal growth journey with that first MSP from a loneliness point of view, finding the community. What did that feel and look like?
Yeah, well, so first MSP, I had my business partner and had the team around us. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I felt lonely. You could feel challenges, and you can go through the same challenges that all business owners and particularly MSP business owners go through. And I think that was the issue before. We used to try and figure it out ourselves and work out what to do and make decisions. But the thing is, again, in our community, everyone's been through the same sort of stuff. So instead of trying to figure it out on your own, it's so much easier to talk to other people and go, I've had this challenge. This has been going on in my world. Have you experienced that? And if you've got a big enough community, and there's the tech tribe, and there's other kind of community events, but in terms of, you can talk to people and they'll go, oh yeah, I went through exactly that same thing. This is what I did about it. Now, the one thing I would err on the on the side of caution for people is there's a lot of advice out there. Everyone's throwing out what they did, how they did it. It doesn't mean that everything you hear is right, but you can take bits that people say, and if it resonates with you, then fine.
Yep.
But it's so much better to do it that way than try and figure everything out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the top on that one for me is answer the question, what does winning look like for you? Stuart and I have just decided we're going to do a podcast on that very, very soon, because that's really important, and it doesn't necessarily mean exit, but what does winning look like for you? Build a plan around it. And then, as Joe says, go out there and work out who can help you accelerate the parts of that plan that are important to you right now. I was listening to an audiobook this week, and I've mentioned this to everybody that I've spoken to. So here you go, you guys are going to get it now. And it was a Stephen Covey statement, and he basically said, make sure that the main thing remains the main thing and is the main thing. And we see so many times MSP business owners come in, I just need sales and marketing, I just need to get this to work and then I'll be all right. Well, in actual fact, your operations is going to probably fall over before anything else anyway. So just one thing at a time, you will get there. You will have every confidence if you're in the community and you're coming to these events and learning and understanding and connecting with people who have. I think that's the thing you just mentioned there. I think it's just such a powerful place to be. So get involved. There we go. There's the first sidetrack on the podcast. Anyway, let's talk about business partners, and let's talk about the different types of relationships that we can have. What was it, Joe, that when you listened to the other episode of myself and Stuart that made you go, I need to share this with the community, I need to get this message out there? What was kind of going on in your world at that time, and guess what was the learning and the development from that space?
Yeah, so obviously in the previous business, I had a business partner. I've got two business partners in the current business, which again is weird. so some people say, "Oh, it didn't work out," like with the business partner in the last one. I'm like, well, it did work out. We did well, and we got an exit. It didn't work, and it wasn't designed to work. What I always put it down to, and the catalyst for the conversation was down to where we was working with a business coach actually, and it was a growth accelerator program.
Okay, yeah.
So we were looking at our forward projections for the business. What did we want to achieve in growth over the next 3 years from that point in time? And this was a valuable exercise that I now do all of the time in business, is plan the next 3 years. And it's a rolling 3-year process. But the thing is, at that moment, we had done business plans in the past and we had targets, but this was an idea of pushing for growth. What are we going to do over the next 3 years? How ambitious are we going to be? And what we realized when we sat around the table with this growth coach and said, right, this is where you're at now, and this is where you want to be in 3 years' time. And we had to put down a figure, starting from turnover. We started, what does the turnover look like in 3 years' time? And we were to put down a figure, and when myself and my business partner both said our figure, it was miles apart, right? miles apart. And so this got us to a point where mine was more ambitious. So I had a higher figure, much higher figure. And what we'd realized is that, our perception of what we wanted from the business, what we were going for, was so wildly different that it made it very difficult to realize or understand that we can meet anywhere in the middle. And what I always put it down to is, over those years, we were growing that business from 2005, and we eventually sold it in 2016. So an 11-year journey. Now, over that time of scaling that business, we already knew that was our positions. I was always more of a risk taker, more ambitious, more growth hungry, and my business partner was always risk averse, more comfortable, happier with the type of business that was good for him. But the good thing is, over the years, we always said that it created a good center line. It was that we basically put ourselves into a good position. I pulled the growth forward. He made sure we didn't go too fast, right? So it was almost like an alignment that worked really to stabilize the business. But the issue that happened, and I kind of always do it like this, I kind of go, what happened is I was going on an upward curve and he was going on a downward curve. So ultimately, I've realised it's a podcast and I'm doing a hand gesture.
Right, I was just thinking that's on video. So for the purpose of the people on audio only, Joe was gestating in an upward fashion with one hand and a downward fashion, causing a gap in the middle on the other. You're kind of cool. You can watch it.
So we were both getting further and further from that center line, and so it became more and more difficult for us to see eye to eye on decisions because of that. So yeah, that's what happened. We realized we got to a point where we were too far apart from each other's perspective of what needed to happen for the business for us to feel good about it and feel successful in our own rights. And to me, that was the moment. That was the moment we went, this isn't working anymore. Not in the same way.
Obviously, you can tell when you speak to people, there's ambition here, there's drive here, there's, this is Joe Burns, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve. When you set the business up, when you originally set the business up, were you both on the same page then and you drifted, or did you want different things? Those things came along, and I'm just interested in where the drift started. Was it a personal thing? And I obviously don't need to go into the details, but was the delta?
I think if we go all the way back to the start, I think generally we were like any other kind of startup business mode. Is that let's go, let's do this, right? We had a plan, but the plan that we produced, the business plan, was more about going to the bank and trying to see if they could give us any money, which we had the start realization back then that you don't get money from the bank. It's kind of for a business to start up, not from nothing. But we created a business plan, and it's funny because I say it was a paper exercise. I looked back at it after 3 years, and we'd actually followed the same plan that we'd written down and put in a drawer, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so I'd say that when we started, we just wanted to get going, and you don't start to realize what your ambitions are, I don't think, straight away, or in a lot of cases there's not a lot of clarity of what your ambitions are. Now, having looked back at all of that journey, and the start of Reformed IT was much more clear cut. Like, this is what I want to achieve personally out of it. This is what we want to achieve from a business perspective, and we translated all that back. So it's much clearer now and much more obvious for me and the co-founders to understand we're on the same page, because we set it at the start, and we keep having realignment meetings to say, where are we at? Are we all still on the same page? Do we all still want the same goal? That's important, I think.
Yeah, I was kind of digging into that a little bit from a personal front as well, because Stuart and I got together. We were both absolute direct competitors, 2.5 years ago when we set the business up. And what was it that we wanted to do? And, as soon as I got into, this is going to sound really weird right now, as soon as I got into business coaching, as soon as when I left corporate back in 2017, I was listening to something Gary Vaynerchuk said. One of my missions in life is to cause a real problem at the church where my funeral is, because I want it to be the biggest church, and I want there to be so many people, because I've left this legacy that is just going to cause such an issue, and what a great problem that's going to be. And okay, that sounds really, may sound a little bit kind of weird. And when Stuart and I were sitting here going, well, why are we doing this? What's the point of doing this? And we ate our own dog food, and we did, before we even told anybody what we were doing, we spent days in our office downstairs doing the vision, the mission, the values. Who are we? Why do people care about us? What do we do for people? How do we all? And the number one thing, and we even do this quite like yourself, reviewing your targets, is what we're doing going to help us leave a legacy
Yeah.
and help other people, the ripple effect of people helping people helping people. And if it isn't, then we've got to stop doing it. If it is, then we continue doing it because it's that cause. And I think you get that, as you kind of, I can see how your business set up now. So maybe, or maybe I'll flick the question around the other way, if the vision and the mission and the values of that business that you started up were created in a real detail to begin with, maybe that might not have got off the ground, or at least with that, with that business partner sort of thing. But it sounds like these are the things that do you embrace all of the things?
I do now. Again, exactly the same as you. I'm all about that. But quite often I have conversations with some people and they think it's a load of rubbish, right? They think, oh, it's just something that corporate companies do just for the fun of it. And so, no, to me, it is important. You've got to understand what is the direction of the business. What is the business about? Why are you doing it? All of those things are massively important to understand. Otherwise, what motivation is that, to push forward? And also, again, when we're talking about alignment from me and a business partner perspective, but the other alignment you've got to do is you've got to get your whole team aligned. You've got to get everybody rowing in the same direction at the same time. And that to me is massive, because if people aren't bought into that, people aren't all on the same, in rowing in the same direction, it's going to be much harder to scale that business. It's going to be much harder to grow the business. So yeah, I'm massively aligned. And the other thing that you mentioned, which I'm part of, sure I'm okay to say this, but I'm part of IT Nation Evolve now as well. And one of their things is legacy planning. So
yes, very much.
So you've got your different plans. You've got your business plan, your legacy plan, your personal plan. So you've got all those plans, and they all need to align. They all need to come together. But you need to kind of start with what's your legacy and what's your own personal plans. Those things are then what you then do to try and understand what your business plan does to facilitate and the vehicle to get you to where you want to be, essentially. So now I'm massively in agreement with all of that.
No, and it's so true. And we speak with many MSPs about when that person, that toxic employee who sits in the corner of your office, and if you are sitting here listening to this now going, yeah, I've got one of them, then get rid of them, right? Just get rid of them, bite the bullet and get rid of them, because I'll tell you what will happen. And I'll tell you, we've probably had 5 conversations so far this year about doing that. Being brave, getting rid of those people because they don't align up with the values and where the business is going. And every single time the rest of the team go, oh, thank God you've done that. We can all work better. And half of the time, half of those 5, or well, not half of the 5, but probably 3 out of the 5 haven't recruited, because everybody else has then buckled in, knuckled down. They're all trying to create what the business is trying to do without these negative people. So, if you've got people there in your business that are not lined up, I could be talking about business partners, but we talk about the team as well. They're not lined up. They're not in tune. They're not running to your values. Then when the stuff hits the fan and you've got to move things around and you've got to change, or a new product comes in and you've got to adapt, or a new member of staff comes in, or you make a decision you want to do something differently, you need your team behind you. And doing that corporate waffle of vision, mission, and values, and it isn't corporate waffles. I don't know why I just said that, but what people see it as is I think, and Stuart probably would agree as well, is the most powerful thing that we teach, the methodology on that as well, which is
we've got our Vision Day coming up in Reformed, where
wow.
Again it's annual Vision Day, which is make sure everyone understands what's going on, what's the direction of the business. We also have a theme, a yearly theme as well. So we have a vision, our mission, and core values. But at the same time, we have an annual theme. This year's theme is automation and efficiency. We want everybody in the business during this year to think, how do we make our role more efficient? How do we automate tasks that we shouldn't be repeating over and over again? So yeah.
And it's amazing how whoever you talk to, there's probably a minimum, even in the best MSPs, a minimum 25% efficiency in it. And efficiency isn't about getting rid of people. It's about giving you headspace so you can do more strategic thinking, and you don't have to get caught up in the weeds. You don't have to get caught up in the tech. Do you know what, Joe? I have no idea where this podcast is going right now. I've got things in here. I think we're making our way through it, aren't we? But it's a great conversation, because I think it's just, it's just so inspiring to hear someone who's applied, a lot of the frameworks. Because guess what? None of this business growth stuff is brand new. It's all been stuff that's tried and tested. And, now people like you and I and Rich Tubb and Paul Green and the others are all out there just blending it in for the MSPs, which is super cool. So you then got to a point when you decided, do you know what, we need to sell this. Was there no way that you could have bought your partner out, or what would...
So the way that conversation went is that my business partner said, I want out, right? He wanted out. So we'd come to this realization that it wasn't working with the two of us anymore, and we needed to make a change. He said he wanted out of the business, and to which I said, that's understandable, given where we're at, and I would be willing to buy you out of the business. But I think the best way to create the valuation for the business is not for us to try and negotiate that between the two of us. I think that'd be difficult and quite messy. What we could do is we could look at what somebody else is prepared to pay for the business. So we set a real market valuation, really. And then when that offer comes along, I want first refusal to pay you 50% of that offer if you would have taken it, if you'd have taken it anyway. But equally, if the offer comes along and we both want to take the offer, then we just sell the whole business instead. So that's the journey that we then went down, is getting people interested in the business to buy the business so that we could establish that market valuation. And when we did eventually get an offer, we obviously negotiated a bit, but we did get an offer that I was like, I'd be willing to cash my chips in at this point to walk away. So yeah, we got to that point. I did have some shakes during that process because then he was stepping away from the business to make sure, one, I could continue to run it, because that was the idea. I was going to stay on after acquisition to run it. And so he stepped away from the business to prove that it would work. And I could see everything that was happening. We were on a great growth trajectory. And I was like, well, this is a good business and it's growing quite well. I did at some stage go back to the acquirer and say, actually, I might have changed my mind. I might end up buying the business myself. Yeah, but I ended up, thinking, well, actually, now's a good time to step away from the table.
Move away and then get away from there. What were some of the key elements? A couple of M&A golden nuggets. Knowing what you know now about your first, that was your first yeah. M&A, wasn't it? In your new business, what would be your 3 strategic objectives to make sure that, number one, you get an offer, and I know that you will because you've done it once, but how to get maximum valuation? What are the 3 things, Joe?
I like that question because I talk about this quite a bit now. So in terms of...
I loaded it up.
Yeah, in terms of... so there's a word that I use called monopsony. And everyone knows of Monopoly because of the board game, but monopsony is basically where there's a market with only one buyer, right? And we put ourselves in that position. We got really excited when we got somebody that come along that was interested in our business. And we got really, really excited because we're like, oh, they're interested. We're having negotiations. And this might lead to something. But what we failed to do is think, well, actually, we want to attract we want multiple bids, because obviously if you've got multiple bids, it drives the price up. If you've only got one, it drives the price down. So yeah, that was a big mistake we made. And I didn't truly reflect on that until years later, thinking actually, we did get a deal that worked for us, but did we undervalue ourselves by not getting multiple bids at the same time? And that was just purely down to, from my opinion, excitement of the offer and the fact that someone is interested, and you kind of get tunnel visioned into that process. So that's first mistake, is absolutely make sure that you're encouraging multiple offers.
Yep.
Which then leads me on to probably the next thing, which is, if build the business, even if you're not planning on selling the business, right? Build the business as if you're selling it to somebody. So just like you do with your products and services, so you should, I hope that what you're doing is you go, right, there's a need for our clients. We're going to create a solution to their problems and their need by creating a product or service that fits that, and it looks attractive. The same thing should apply to your business. It should look attractive to a buyer. So in order to do that, you need to understand what's important to the buyers, and before we start recording, we chatted briefly about business owners being involved in the business. That isn't seen as an attractive trait, because they rely, especially if it's smaller and it's solely reliant on a single person or a couple of people, then it's really hard for somebody to buy that, because they've got to try and get it out of that relationship management with just one or two proprietors. So I think one of the double edged sword on this one, is understand what people want in terms of an acquisition and what they would buy, and remove yourself from the business, make yourself redundant from the business, build teams, build processes, make it so you're not part of that business. I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely. It's something that we talk about building a business that works for you rather than you for it, with where the owner's not needed, where the Joe's not needed. And don't be scared of that. I remember back in the day, a lot of succession planning we were doing in corporate. And, one of my bosses said to me, I'm not scared about you taking my job because I can't move anywhere else unless I've got someone who can step in. And that's exactly the same now. And that was in a corporate.
I'll tell you, sorry, Ian, I'll tell you one more quick thing on that. When we started the Pyronet business, the previous business, me and my business partner did everything. Yeah, we were the techies, we were the sales, we were the account manager. We did everything ourselves. And this time around with the reforms, it was very clear from day one with my business partners. I'm not being a techie, right? We start this business. I'm not a techie. That is not my role. I'm not going back to doing first line support. So I think this time around, I felt that we were starting the business more as a business owner rather than a technical person starting a job.
Yeah, because there is that evolution and that maturity from a techie to business owner as you're going through, which is, what both you and I do in the community do and everything like that, which is ever so important, because unless you've got that confidence to become a business owner, you're always going to stay a techie and you keep doing things and you're going to keep getting distracted with shiny balls and things like that. Just one last thing I just want to talk to you about before we bring this in for a bit of a landing is the importance of identifying a really clear target customer and target client. We talk about niching. Everyone talks about niching. Most people think, I don't really need to do that. I've just shared with you some results from some of our clients who are in really, really tight niches. You're in a niche. I'm in a niche. Most people who are working, supporting the MSPs are in a niche. Guess what? They're in the IT channel. How did this play out for you? What was your journey around kind of like marketing to everyone? Because I'm not going to lose out to the performance that you got when you really did tighten that marketing channel down.
Yeah, so obviously previous business, exactly the same as everyone else that says, can't really niche. We service everyone. Previous business was difficult to grow because we tried to sell to everyone, and the problem we're trying to sell to everyone is too big. It's too big. It's not clear. It's not defined. This time around, we were much clearer. I wouldn't say we, unlike some, like your example you shared, where you very, very specific and laser focused on one particular sector of service. With Reformed, we don't go to that level. What we have done is we've identified 3 or 4 scenarios that we solve the problem for. So we've got industry-specific sectors that we work with and size profiles that we work with. And we know we do a really good job with them, because some people, what happens for a lot of people is they think, if I do that, if I narrow my target down, I'm not going to get as many opportunities. Yeah, exactly. And so they think they can't do that because they won't get the work. But actually, you can generate more work doing that because it's so much easier to market to and target to. And the other thing is you'll win more business, because one of ours is like solicitors, legal, law. And the thing is, if we're in front of a managing partner at a law firm, we already know through working with other businesses, we already know their problems. We know what systems they're using, that they're using digital dictation. They're probably using a remote desktop. So cybersecurity is really important to them. They've got cyber essentials and insurance. We know all of the things that they're going through because we've seen it over and over again. And so it means as you start talking to them and go, are you using this system? Are you using that digital dictation? They already feel more comfortable that you know and understand that business. And so you win more business because you're the choice, because they know that you could help them. And that's the problem. You're trying to sell to everybody. You've not got a very clear and defined solution to a problem. You're not going to win as much business. You're going to find it harder to market to them. So to me, it's massive.
And this is the whole marketing message, isn't it? When you're looking at some of the marketing material that's out there and you sort of think, that's that's not really very exciting. But if it says, looking, if you want to secure your legal firm in Stockport, blah, 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 this is, hang on a minute, that's me. It's so important. I just thought I'd just drag that golden nugget out to you because it's something that we bang on about all the time. And I know it's really important for you and it's helped you and succeed in your business as well. Joe, thanks ever so much again for your time today. Absolutely love talking to you. Love the story, the journey that you've gone on, the application, and also the blooming results that you're getting as well, which is incredible. MSP business owners either in a partnership or thinking about going into a partnership right now, what's some of the, couple of 3 things, the top things they need to do as soon as they hit the shutdown on this podcast?
First thing is understand your personal goals and ambitions. Talked about it earlier, legacy. What is it you want as an individual? And make sure that you map and align the business to what your personal goals are. And if you're in a partnership or you've got multiple people involved, then make sure that everybody is on the same page in terms of the business journey and how that's going to help you all individually to achieve your own personal goals. Be very clear on that from day one. Not only be clear on it from day one, as we experienced, it transitioned and changed over the time. We didn't have any realignment conversations. It's important to keep checking in. Make sure you're still on the same page. And if you're not, why not? And what needs to be done about it to keep you going, basically. Somebody needs to exit, then understand that as quickly as possible and how to handle that situation.
Fantastic. That's absolutely brilliant. And obviously reach out to the community as well. You find them all over the place. LinkedIn, Tech Tribe, CompTIA, follow myself and Joe, and you'll see where we're hanging out and the people that we're hanging out with as well. Joe, if anybody wants to continue a conversation with you and learn a little bit more about what you're up to right now, how do they get in contact with you, mate?
Best way is usually LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, posting, sharing my journey. So, search for Joe Burns on LinkedIn and you should find me associated with Reformed IT if there's more than one that pops up.
Great stuff. And we'll put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes as well. So look, bringing this one in, congratulations on your journey. Thank you ever so much for reaching out and sharing your journey with podcast listeners today as well, and wishing you all the success. And I never even asked you may not want to share. What does winning look like in the second MSP?
Right. So second MSP, I've got a personal wealth target in mind. So generally the business is to help me to achieve my personal wealth target.
Lovely. Brilliant stuff. That's what it's all about. That'll give you all those choices to do whatever it is that you want to do. So Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. And I look forward to catching up with you real soon.
See you later.
So I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, I'd love it if you could leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you want to learn more about how to take your MSP to $1 million, or if you're already there, go faster, then come and join Stuart Warwick and myself in the Scale with Confidence Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. You go and enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.